All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Monday Motivation, my favorite time of the week. Hey, I hope you're doing great, and just know that you are, because it's all about mindset. If you think you are, you are. If you think you're not, you're not, because that is just the way mindset works, right? So today we're going to talk about a powerful new shift, right? This Monday Motivation is about creating powerful mindset shifts that allow you to achieve more, and in turn will also allow you to maintain the results you get long term. And today's no different, right? What we're going to talk about today is a powerful shift that you can make. And that powerful mindset shift is to learn to change your patterns. Because when you change your patterns, you'll change your results. It's not just, right? It's not just about changing your habits. You got to change your patterns. Because if you keep doing what you've always done, you know that you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. And if you're frustrated because you keep ending up in the same place, well, listen up today. Because the problem isn't that you're lazy or unmotivated or broken. The problem is that your patterns are an autopilot. And you go through the same patterns all the time, right? We go through the same behavioral patterns all the time. And I see it every single week. I talk to clients and I work with them to break through their patterns. So let's talk about that, for example. One of the biggest patterns that I see clients go through is attempting to quit on themselves when life gets in the way, when the challenges show up, and when the obstacles show up. It's a pattern. To allow your obstacles to become your excuses for giving up, well, that's a pattern. And that is what you've always done. So to move forward and to get results, well, you must break that pattern just like you break the overeating pattern. Or you break the pattern of eating when you're stressed. It's a pattern of giving up on yourself when you can't see another way. When you can't see how to move forward, well, you give up because you think that's the thing to do. You think that's the thing you have to do. But here's the thing. You're here because you've been locked into those patterns. You're here because you've been locked into the pattern of not honoring your commitments to yourself to move forward and accomplish something. When you say, yeah, I'm going to move forward and accomplish this, and then life happens and then you give up on yourself because of whatever the reason is, that is a pattern. And if you go back and look through your life, you'll see that that's your pattern. That's what you do, right? You're here because you've been locked into a pattern of putting others before yourself. That's a pattern. And we've been talking about that. Last week we talked about filling your cup first because we want to get you out of that pattern of putting others before yourself. We're here to get you out of the pattern of starting and allowing your obstacles to become your excuses for giving up, for quitting, right? For telling yourself this isn't the right time, I've got too much going on. Well, that's a pattern. And you've got to break that pattern in order to move forward, in order to get the results you're looking for. You've got to break the pattern of faulty thinking that all the stars must be aligned, Mercury must be in retrograde, and it's got to be the age of Aquarius before you can continue, before you can get the results, right? It's that all or nothing mindset that leads you to fail, right? But here's the thing. You're here now. And one of the most important things that we do for you as your coach is to hold you to your commitments so that we can break that pattern of you starting and stopping, of you giving up when life gets hard, when the situations don't align, when you can't see a way forward, you tend to give up. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be big financial reasons. Yes, that's an obstacle. It could be big medical challenges. That's an obstacle. It could be big family issues. That's an obstacle. But they're just obstacles. And the minute you say, I can't continue because of my obstacle, well, that becomes an excuse. Now you're allowing your excuse to become, you're allowing your obstacle to become an excuse to give up on yourself. And here's the thing. We are the committed coaches because we are committed to your success. And I always tell you up front, I tell my clients on my onboarding calls that I don't allow you to give up on yourself for any reason whatsoever. None. If you're here for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, I will hold you accountable to be here for every last day of that time you committed to be here. Not one day less. You can be here for a year or two. You can be here for more. But I'm going to hold you to be accountable, to be here for the time you say you're going to be here, because that's accountability. That is how I help you to break the patterns. And for you to be successful, one of the most important lessons you must learn is how to break your patterns. Because your patterns are what's holding you back. Your patterns are what's responsible for your result. And if you don't change those patterns of starting and stopping because it's not the right time, it's not what you thought it was going to be, if you don't change those patterns, who cares if it's what you thought it was going to be? You're not here to change the school, you're here to graduate, like my psychology professor used to tell me. You're not here to determine how I coach you, you're here to be coachable so I can coach you. If you know how to do this, you wouldn't be here. If you knew how to get results on your own, you wouldn't be here. So your job is to be coachable and allow me to coach you. Allow us to coach you. Allow your coach to coach you. That is how you break the patterns of your behavior that have been holding you back. Right? You say, I can't do this right now. Well, that's a pattern. And guess what? You decided that, hey, I need to break these patterns, so I can't do this on my own. So I'm going to pay you to hold me accountable. See, that's what you did. You're paying me to hold you accountable to breaking these patterns, right? To do the things that you don't want to do. And that's why I'm here. That's why your coach is here, to hold you accountable. And the very first thing we're going to hold you accountable to is to be here for the length of time you say you're going to be here and not one day less. Because that's your pattern. Allowing your obstacles to become your excuses is a pattern. As opposed to learning to work through those obstacles, because those obstacles are the very lessons you need to learn. Those are your opportunities for learning and growth. Those are the very things you must get through, either now or somewhere down the road. You must get through those obstacles in order to get the results you're looking for, because that's your pattern. And you must break that pattern in order to move forward. So just understand that when you come to us, your coaches, and you ask that, hey, I can't continue. I've had 4 clients this past week I've had that conversation with. And the answer was the same. I don't allow you to quit for any reason whatsoever. Right? If you're on life support, I will put your program on pause until you're not. The only way you get out of this is through death. Because then, okay, well, that's final. But you're here, and I will hold you accountable to every last day to help you to break that pattern. So let's talk about how to break behavioral patterns, because that's an important part of your process. And the problem is these patterns are on autopilot and you don't even realize it, right? A behavioral pattern is a loop, just like a habit loop, right? Something you've done over and over again until your brain learned to do it automatically. So you are not in charge of these patterns, your brain is, just like you're not in charge of your habits. So think about it. Stress, you eat for comfort. You're tired, you skip the gym. You hit a plateau, you get discouraged, you quit. You think that's just something that happens? No, that is your pattern. That is a pattern of behavior. So these aren't isolated moments, these are loops, right? They're practice reactions. And if we want new outcomes, we must interrupt that loop. Just like to create new habits, you've got to interrupt that habit loop. Well, you've got to interrupt this pattern of behavior as well, because it's being controlled by your brain. And every time you keep running through it, guess what? You get the same outcome, nothing. because you give up. So, why this is the key to your long-term transformation? Well, willpower will get you started, but willpower fades, right? Motivation fades, willpower fades. What sustains change is identity, self-awareness, and pattern recognition. You got to recognize those patterns, and I'm very good at pointing them out to you. So when you notice the pattern, that is when you regain control, right? When you rewire the loop, you unlock your freedom, and you need to understand that. So I may seem like I'm being a hard ass, but I have to be, because I have to hold you accountable to interrupting these patterns. That's how long-term change is built. That's how long-term transformation takes place. Not just by forcing a new habit, but by disrupting the old ones, the old patterns. That is the process. And I'll give you a very good example of why I am very adamant about doing this. Last week, I just had my first client who, over the past year, has achieved that 100-pound weight loss mark. 100 pounds over the past year. Now imagine that, right? But guess what? That very same client, 2 days after her onboarding, came to me and wanted to quit because she can't do this and she doesn't think this is the right time and for blah, 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 blah. All those reasons. The same reasons that every single one of you have come to me to say you can't do this now. And the same reasons. I hear the same reasons over and over again. And the answer is always the same. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Why? Your goal is to lose weight. Your goal is to get healthy. Well, none of it matters because guess what? If you're eating every day, you can lose weight. You can get healthy. You can build a better body, period. If you're eating every day, it doesn't matter what struggles you're going through. It doesn't matter what obstacles. It doesn't matter what health conditions you're going through because the very things you need to eat are the very things that's going to help you to go through those big health obstacles. You got to get your body healthy. You got to create healthier hormones. You got to create a healthier internal environment. Well, what else do you think is going to help you get healthy? The meds you're on? Meds don't create health. Meds address disease conditions. To create health, you got to eat the right foods in the right amounts at the right time, period. So it doesn't matter what you're going through, what health conditions, what medical conditions, nothing we're doing here is opposite what you need to do. It is exactly what you need to do to move forward with any condition you're dealing with. So just understand that. So if you're eating every day, and guess what you are? The only time you're not is maybe when you're on life support. And that's why I put your program in pause, because every other time you can be moving forward. You can be making progress. So remember that. What if I had said yes to my client who asked to quit 2 days after onboarding? Would she have transformed her life? Would she have been 100 pounds lighter by now? It's not just a weight, she's completely transformed her life. She's living a completely different life. She's been married for the past 3 months to the love of her life. She met at the gym, going to the gym for the very first time in her life. Met him right on the treadmill next to her. Right? Now she's living her best life. A completely different person, a completely different life, completely different mindset from the person she was a year ago. This is a transformation we're talking about. And how did we accomplish that? We accomplished that by interrupting her patterns of behavior. That pattern of quitting when things get uncomfortable and it seems like, hey, there's some work in this. Hey, this is uncomfortable. Guess what? You got to get uncomfortable before you can get results. So that is what we're here to do. We're here to help you interrupt those patterns. And step one is you got to notice the trigger. You know, what happens right before the behavior? Well, usually there's some uncomfortability. You're usually uncomfortable. You know, it could be stress, it could be boredom, it could be feeling overwhelmed, it could be all anxiety, depression, all of these things. So awareness is power. You can't change what you're not aware of. So start paying attention. That's the first step. Notice the trigger. Notice what you do when you get into these situations. When you're stressed out, you're bored, you're overwhelmed, you're suffering from anxiety. It seems like there's just too much at the moment and you can't deal with it. What do you do next? That's your pattern. So notice the trigger. Now I want you to name the pattern. Step 2, name the pattern. Get clear. What's the loop? See, the trigger leads to an emotion, leads to a behavior, which leads to the outcome, right? Because the trigger leads to you feeling a certain way. That emotion, we're an emotional creature, our emotions drive our behaviors. That's the pattern you're locked into, and that drives our outcome. So, for example, when I feel anxious, well, that's the trigger. I usually eat sweets. That's the behavior. To feel in control, that's the outcome. Right? You feel anxious, you turn to food. That's the behavior that you've been locked into, so you can feel more in control. That's the outcome you're looking for. No one wants to feel anxious, depressed, or terrible, so you want to get out of that way of feeling. So you feed it instead. And you see, once you see the pattern, you weaken its hold automatically. You've made the unconscious now conscious, and that is always the first step in interrupting a pattern loop, a habit loop. You've got to make the unconscious conscious. Right? So you notice the trigger, you name the pattern, you interrupt the loop. That's step number 3. Now this is your power move. How do you interrupt the loop? Well, you do something, anything to disrupt the autopilot, right? Just a simple interrupt. Could be a thought interrupt. Take a deep breath, go for a walk, say a mantra, journal your thoughts, do something different. Ask yourself, what would my future self do? What would the future version of myself do? We've been having this conversation early in the year about living from the point of view of your alter ego. What would my future self do? That's your alter ego. What would my future self do right now? That one pause, guys, changes everything. That one pause changes everything. Now here's the final piece of the puzzle. You've got to replace that pattern with a new pattern. You can't just remove a pattern. You have to replace it, right? You choose a new response that meets the same need. Well, you wanted to feel in control. You choose a new response that meets the same need. If you usually eat when you're stressed, try a calming ritual instead. If you usually skip your workout when you're overwhelmed or tired, well, commit to 5 minutes of movement, a 5-minute walk instead of 0. Commit to just doing something at home. Just move your body. Just do some calisthenics instead. You're interrupting that pattern. So you build the new loop before you need it. That's the important thing. That's how you rewire your brain for success, guys. You got to build that new loop before you need it so that you keep practicing it. And when those big emotions show up, you're ready. That is your process. So remember, here's your challenge for the week. I want you to pick one pattern that's holding you back right now. Now I want you to walk through the 4 steps. So pick one pattern that's holding you back. What is that pattern? I want you to walk through the 4 steps. Notice the trigger. When are you triggered? What's the trigger? Is it anxiety? Is it overwhelm? Is it fear? Is it self-doubt? What is the trigger? Now I want you to name the pattern. What is it? I want you to interrupt the loop. How can you interrupt the loop? By doing something different, right? Something as simple as asking yourself, well, what would my future self do right now? How would my future self handle this right now? That's a thought interrupt. And sometimes it's that easy to interrupt a pattern just with a thought interrupt, right? Now I want you to replace it with a new behavior. What can you do instead? What can you do instead? Right? So you notice the trigger. Name the pattern, interrupt the loop, replace it with a new behavior. Practice it over and over until it becomes your new normal. Practice it over and over until it becomes your new normal. This is the process, guys, of changing your patterns. You got to notice the trigger: stress, boredom, overwhelm, anxiety, fear, doubt, self-doubt. What is it? Name the pattern. Get clear about what it is. What's driving you? Interrupt the loop. Right? When you feel that trigger, whether you're anxious, you have fear, you got to interrupt that loop with a thought interrupt, a deep breath, go for a walk, say a mantra. We talked about speaking a mantra last week. We've been talking about living from the point of view of your future self, of your alter ego. What would my future self do right now? Right? That's a thought interrupt. That's one way of interrupting that pattern loop. Replace it with a new pattern. Well, what can you do? Well, you got to do something differently. If you usually eat when you're stressed, well, try some other kind of ritual, right? Do something else, because if hunger is not the problem, then food is not the solution. So what else can you do instead? Right? Instead of skipping that workout, well, how can you do something for 5-10 minutes instead? Right? So replace the behavior. That is important. You got to replace it with a new behavior. So, guys, I want you to say this with me. My results will change when my patterns change. My results will change when my patterns change, because I am no longer operating on autopilot. I lead myself with purpose. Can you say that for me? My results will change when my patterns change, because I am no longer operating on autopilot. I lead myself with purpose. So guys, this week, I want you to stop trying to force change and start upgrading your patterns. Start noticing those patterns and realize that accountability is one of the most effective tools in helping you to interrupt those patterns, because you're going to go through a lot of emotions here. You're going to go through a lot of frustration, overwhelm, anxiety, fear, self-doubt, worry. You're going to experience all of that. And those are the reasons why most people attempt to give up on themselves. As your coach, I help you to interrupt that pattern by helping you to see that that is the pattern you're locked into. And that pattern is the reason why you are not at your goal yet. That is the pattern that has been holding you back. So we must interrupt that pattern. Therefore, I must say no to you when you come to me and say, Coach, I got to quit my program because. Anything after that because is just an excuse. That is your obstacle becoming your excuse. And that is the pattern that you have been locked into for so long, allowing your obstacles to become your excuse for quitting. Therefore, you're always starting and stopping and getting absolutely nowhere. On my onboarding, I asked you, how many of you want to make this the last time you attempt to lose weight and get healthy? Every single one of you say yes. You cannot make this the last time if you give up on yourself for any reason whatsoever. And I always say that over the past year, I've had dozens of clients who have lost anywhere from 50 to 100 pounds. Dozens. And why have they done that? It's not because they haven't gone through big challenges. Every single one of them have gone through big, humongous challenges. But we learn to work through those challenges and keep moving forward, instead of giving up, instead of allowing those challenges to become their excuses for giving up. We don't do that here. That is not what we do here. So just know that death is the only way of getting out of this contract with yourself. Sometimes we need to step back in order to move forward. Yes, I get that. That's an important habit to practice. So sometimes we may need to pause where we are and pick up a later time. I get that, and I do that with my clients, some clients who need to do that for some reasons. But I never allow my clients ever to give up on themselves. So just know that that is going to be the answer when you come to me. That is going to be the conversations we're going to be having. The conversation isn't on, hey, the obstacle that you're going on, you can't continue for because of the obstacle you're facing. The conversation is, how do we interrupt this pattern of stopping when the obstacles before you seem so insurmountable? Because that's not what you do. I've taught you better by now. When you're facing a wall, you don't turn around and run and retreat. You build a freaking ladder. One step at a time, one habit at a time helps you to get over that wall. Each habit you develop is a new step on that ladder that allows you to get over that wall. That is how you make progress. It doesn't matter how tall that wall is, how big that obstacle is. You keep stepping up that ladder, you will get over that wall. And that is how you achieve transformation. You turn around and run, guess what? You've lost. And the only difference between those who win and those who fail, those who win never give up on themselves. They keep building ladders. They keep recognizing their patterns. And they keep changing those old patterns to new ones. So again, my results will change when my patterns change, because I am no longer operating on autopilot. I lead myself with purpose. I want you to say that often. I want you to remember it. Write it out. Repeat it to yourself. My results will change when my patterns change, because I am no longer operating on autopilot. I lead myself with purpose. And I ask you to adopt the mindset of, I will win no matter what. Because that's why you're here. And that's the direction I'm taking you in. All right, guys, may the best of your todays be the worst of your tomorrows. And go out there, break some patterns, and do something worth imitating. All right, catch you next time.